hopefully it's not as dark as what Tom is pertaining, because I will be running out of Facebook if that really happens.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Marketers the Universe podcast. I'm Hayden Woods-Williams, a digital marketing team lead here at Brew Digital, and we are here for our second episode of 2025. We are loving this month so far. It's just been so cheerful. Everyone seems really happy when I've spoken to them, which is really nice. So we're going to start things off with a little bit of a moan. We're looking at CRM, and we really recently did some research. I say research, I've Googled some things and found a report from a company called Freshworks that said only 73% of businesses are using a CRM. That was in 2024. We're going to look at what the state of that is in 2025 and whether you can survive without a CRM in this digital era. After that, we'll be looking at Mark Zuckerberg's recent announcement around moderation changes and how they are removing fact-checking and replacing it with community notes, amongst other things. For now, though, let's get on with the podcast. Okay, kicking off our first topic for today, we are looking at CRM and why you should probably have one now, because it is 2025. This conversation came about after seeing a statistic from Freshworks that says 73% of businesses use CRM software in 2024. That means 27% of companies are not using CRMs. If you are working off an Excel sheet, we are looking at you. Talking about this topic today, we have our senior email marketing manager, Mark Bundle, and we also have one of our ex-Brew Digital staff members, Freya Wilcox, returning to discuss this as well. To kick things off, I'm going to keep things simple just in case anyone listening to this podcast is one of those people in that quarter of businesses that don't have, over a quarter of businesses that don't have a CRM. In 2025, what is the CRM? What does it do? Mark, let's kick off with you.
I mean, first of all, start with the very basics in case people don't have them. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management or Customer Relationship Marketing, depending on who you want to talk to. It is a system whereby you keep all of the data you have about your contacts, about the people you're talking to, your customers, your prospects, all in one place that you can use to cross-reference that data, to segment it and put it into different pots. And normally you can use to automate journeys to them as well, to save yourself time and effort by talking to people in an automated but still personalized way.
Super. Thank you, Mark. Very concise. I like that. So looking at that stat from Freshworks last year, does it surprise you that the number is that high of companies that don't use a CRM?
I mean, yes and no. No, there are a lot of small businesses, a lot of freshly launched businesses, the age of the side hustle and kind of the serial entrepreneur. You're going to have a lot of businesses that are so small that maybe they don't need it yet. Because there are businesses that are that small. But at the same time, it's not going to be 27% of all business. There's absolutely people out there running, like you said, Excel spreadsheets that should be running a proper CRM system because they are too scared, because they lack the know-how, because they think it's expensive. And just my call to all of them would be, oh my God, please. There are options that are easily accessible and free. We will help if you're stuck getting started. But yeah, you should absolutely be using a CRM system unless you're literally in the first days and weeks of your business.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, data is so important right now. And understanding those conversations you've had and being able to use the data that you've got is so important, right? Even if you are in your first few weeks, you have to start yourself from a good standing. Otherwise, you're just going to be looking back and going, why the fudge didn't I start that earlier?
It's one of those things, well, it's better to start early and organize everything than get everything in and then go, oh, wait, how do I organize this? Am I compliant with things? Am I doing it properly? Because doing it early and small and getting it right is so much easier and so much cheaper than trying to fix a mess that's already there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm going to jump over to Freya now. Obviously, your marketing career is a little bit fresher than Mark's. What I want to ask is, did you understand and know how important a CRM is when you kind of first came in to work at Brew Digital as a marketing intern?
No, not at all. I had no idea. I did branding and communications at uni, so I learned a lot about sort of like the traditional methods of marketing, but I had really no idea about the importance of a CRM, and working with Mark and working with emails and data and stuff. It is so incredibly important, and it's something that I actually can't believe I wasn't aware of until I started actually working in marketing. It's something that you'd assume that they would teach you in universities, and they don't. Not all of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's wild that it's not spoken about more. And actually, one of the things that I've heard quite a lot in my time in marketing is for sales. CRMs are for sales. How do we get past that opinion?
So yeah, it's quite upsetting that people say it's for sales, because if nothing else, one of the definitions of it is customer relationship marketing. So yeah, that's really sales led. Yes, a lot of CRM platforms started that way. Absolutely, they did, as a way to track inbound leads, as a way to track call times and call lengths and deal repeats and that kind of stuff. But most of the systems these days are much more marketing focused. And that is from the biggest kind of HubSpot, Salesforce things, all the way down to the new kind of entrants in the market that are trying to disrupt and break through. Marketing absolutely relies on CRM. Personalization and scale is the number one probably requirement for marketing in this day and age. And that is not just the email side, which is obviously kind of my playground, but even in the kind of the social ads and the LinkedIn ads, that kind of stuff, they're all still driven from CRM, because you can build things like lookalike lists, you can build targets and things like that. So I don't think there's a single part of marketing, other than maybe SEO, that CRM doesn't touch on and can't improve in some way.
I can't kind of back you on that more. I think digital marketing relies so much, or good digital marketing relies so much on quality data. And a messy CRM, or the lack of a CRM, is just going to be putting you at a disadvantage straight out of the gate. Interestingly, you mentioned Salesforce, who maybe should be called Marketing Force, and HubSpot. And according to Google, I think those two, plus Microsoft Dynamics, lead the way when it comes to the CRM market share. Do you have a preference to any tools, or do you think there are any smaller CRMs that are making waves and are better, particularly for those companies who are in that 27% who might be, startups or just lack that understanding?
My preference is probably HubSpot, but that's just because I'm most familiar with it. HubSpot is probably the most accessible of the big players. Salesforce is definitely the most customizable. It's absolutely crazy what you can do in there. If you're just starting out, shop around. Yes, these big ones do offer some free plans to start with, and you will get some support in setting those up because they're interested in helping you grow, so that they can you use more tools and they can charge you more. It's exactly the same with smaller players though, and they might have different niche things that are more specified to your business. So a lot of the disruptors, a lot of the new players in the game are trialing new things, or they're approaching things from a different angle. There was a company we spoke to last year, apologies, I forget the name, but their thing was very much about the journeys, and all their focus was on how you can use the data for journeys to automate processes and how people move through their life cycles and all that kind of stuff. And that was their big focus, and they did it really, really well. Whereas if you want a more broad kind of, I just want to get started, then yeah, probably a HubSpot or a Salesforce or something like that is going to be a better starting point, because it will do everything you need, but it just might not do it in the way you want. So there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off between functionality and accessibility and kind of ease of use, I guess.
Super. And Freya, as someone who has had to learn how to use CRM on the job, basically, are there any tips that you've got on how you can get over that overwhelming feeling of taking your first step into a CRM?
Yeah, I would honestly just say take it slowly. And like we talked about on the past podcast, learning is so important, and dedicated time for learning is so important. I've been really lucky that Mark has set aside an hour of his time every other week to help me, once a month, one of the two, to help me learn and sort of develop my HubSpot skills, and it has been really, really helpful to the point where like now I can answer questions for other people. Whereas when I first came into Brew, obviously I had no real idea what CRM was or the importance of it. So definitely just take the time, dedicate, say, an hour a week to learning about it, but don't overwhelm yourself with knowledge. Things like HubSpot is a huge tool. It's an amazing tool, but it's a huge and complicated tool. So if you don't get it all straight away, don't put that pressure on yourself. It takes time.
Super. Thank you for that. Mark, have you got anything to add?
No, Freya's exactly right. There's a limited amount of stuff you can break inside of CRM as well. So yeah, learn by doing, learn by trying to break things. There's always a big red button somewhere saying send or commit. As long as you're not hitting that, there's only so much damage you can do.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about damage and the damage that you can do, we've got to touch GDPR and data regulations. How can companies that are maybe see these words but don't fully understand them, or you're a criminal and it's a Batman logo in the sky and you realize that it's coming to get you, how do you get over that fear?
Yeah, GDPR, the four least popular letters in the English language. I've heard them referred to as the goddamn privacy rules as well, which is quite fun. Do you know what? If you're doing things properly, they're not scary. It's annoying, but not scary. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're following the rules, and you're following the guidance that your CRM sets out for you, chances are you're going to have no issue. GDPR was there to stop people doing bad things, sort of capital BT. Largely, it's about making sure that if you're gathering data, you're doing it and people know you're gathering data. So make sure you're asking for consent. Are you keeping that data for as long as you need? That's something the CRM system can help you with. That's specifically one of the best things about the CRM system, is it can help you with that. Other than that, it's largely, are you spamming? Are you doing things you know ethically you shouldn't be doing? Are you abusing people's data? And yes, there are all sorts of kind of different nuances, and throughout Europe there's slightly different things, because as well as GDPR, you then have to apply to all of the local regulations as well. In the UK, that's the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulation, which is from the 70s. So that's wonderfully up to date. But yeah, everyone gets really scared about it because they see the 1% of turnover or unlimited fine. Honestly, largely, don't do anything you wouldn't want somebody to do to you. And you're probably fine in GDPR, and your CRM system will help you with the rest.
I mean, that's a line that we should be taking like completely through across all of marketing, right? Like, don't do anything that you wouldn't like to be done to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with stuff like into CRM, one of the key things, as we've already said, is personalization. That can go too far. You can be creepy with personalization. If you're putting details into an email that if you received it, you went, ooh, no, I don't like that. Chances are your audience don't either. Yeah, do unto others as you would have them do unto you is, probably actually a really good rule for just CRM generally.
Nice. And I'm going to start thinking about wrapping this up now. But before we do that, a question to both of you. We like to try and look for examples of things in practice. Do you have any examples of how using a CRM has improved a client or a company that you worked for's digital marketing?
Yeah, I mean, CRM is what I've done now for the last best part of a decade. If I didn't have an example, it would be terrifying. I mean, straight up getting started with a CRM, instead of using an Excel sheet, it means that A, you can be GDPR compliant, so you can process that consent and stuff and have it timestamped, which is what you need. So that'll make any business better. And there are also, it's a series of garages that I worked with. And they, obviously, MOTs for them are a big deal. And they were able to leverage the data they collected about MOT dates, registration numbers, that kind of thing, to send out a really highly personalized MOT reminder journey. So a couple of months out, you get an email going, your car registration blah, with a picture of that car as well, or a picture of the car that's the right color, at least I think it was, is due in however many days, 60 days. And then there's a series of 4 or 5 emails running up to the big day and to just after as well, I think. It was basically saying, look, we're reminding us to get you at MOT, which obviously is a really important thing. But it wasn't too creepy, it wasn't too intrusive, and it also gave the option at every stage to say, I don't want to hear about this anymore, which I think is really key as well. Being able to stop receiving these things is a really important part of CRM and of GDPR.
Amazing. I think that's such a good example as well, because when we think about CRM and marketing technology, we think about the big tech companies. We think about offices and that kind of thing. But actually, like these small local companies or companies that are working in those industries that are, real estate, hospitality, non-profit, when we look at the data, they use CRM even less. But it's so important for those companies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a small local business I use that sells calzones, part-baked calzones. They use their data. They're only a relatively small business, but the emails I receive from them have the things that I order the most at the top. And I know other people it has their favorites at the top. For charities, there's another local charity I give to that's a hospice, and they know which events I've been to before. They know which fundraising appeals I've donated to before. And so they can tailor their communications to me to the things that are most likely to elicit money from me. It's a good cause, so I'll let it slide. But the concept still of, as a charity at heart, is a money-making machine. It's there to generate as much revenue as it can for this cause. So being able to do that, even as a charity, is really important. And it has a great ROI and a great investment for a future of a business.
That's such a valid point. If I look at the data that I've got in front of me from Freshworks, non-profit is one of the lowest uptakes of CRM usage. I think it's at 57%. That's mind-blowing. And I imagine there is the cost. But really good examples, Mark. Freya, is there anything you wanted to add?
Mark's covered it all. I haven't worked with any other CRM tools other than HubSpot, so HubSpot is all I know at this point. But yeah, I would like to emphasize unsubscribe buttons are your best friend and not sending follow-up emails after unsubscribing. But yeah, apart from that, Mark's got it all covered.
That's such a valid point. We have all had those emails that we go, why am I getting this? And if someone's doing that to you, you don't want them to get your email right. Wrapping things up, we've mentioned at the start around, over a quarter of businesses don't have a CRM. If you had 30 seconds to convince them that they need to prioritize CRM in 2025, we've maybe covered this a little bit, but I really want to kind of emphasize this at the end of the topic. What would you tell them? Freya, we're going to start with you.
God, that's a hard question. Don't be afraid it gets easier and it won't ever get less important. Way less than 30 seconds, but the point still stands.
I mean, I feel like it's. I don't think you could have said it better, actually. It was concise and impactful. Mark, to round us up.
Yeah, I mean, Freya's thing there was brilliant. I would say there are free options, so don't worry about cost. Most good providers will help support you get it set up as well, so don't worry about the technical debt of that. And it's a bit of a time drain, but it's going to save you time in the future. So look at the whole thing as an investment in the future that you need to make now, same as you would in kind of manufacturing or social or research or anything else.
Super. Thank you both. Yeah, grand.
So we're now going to turn our attention to the moderation announcements that Meta made in recent weeks. Freya, Debbie and myself will talk around what these mean for end users as well as businesses and why these changes have happened. I just wanted to quickly jump in before we went to that recording to let people know that there is some language in this section that may be triggering or upsetting for certain listeners because we are talking about the language which Meta has decided is permissible on their platform, and it's not great. I have also flagged it in the recording, but I just wanted to let you know in advance as well. So just be aware and continue to be kind and look after each other. Over to Freya.
Today we're going to be talking about what does Meta's moderation changes mean for brand safety. So as some of you may or may not have been aware, Meta has recently sort of changed the way they're going to be fact checking on their platforms. But sort of in your own words, Debbie, what has Meta and Mark Zuckerberg just announced?
Yeah, so it's not just Meta. Other brands are revisiting like how they regulate content, and to summarize it all, Meta is basically putting it to their community to judge if this content is okay, to clarify changes, anything else, which has been before a third-party checker.
Right. And Tom, that is how you see it as well? That's what's going on?
Yeah, pretty much. They are Well, I mean, I see it a little bit more cynically in that they are essentially abdicating all responsibility for moderating. So, as Debbie said, they are now putting it to the community. Fact checkers are being dropped in favor of community notes, which is something that X, formerly Twitter, have implemented in the past. They're also I think the more problematic elements of it is the content policies and restrictions around topics like immigration and gender. So Mark Zuckerberg said that they feel like their moderation policies were out of touch with the public discourse. So they're winding back all of those protections for protected classes and everything else so that anybody can say essentially whatever they want. And other than actually illegal material, it's going to be the case that anything goes on all of Meta's platforms from now on.
Crikey. Right, so educate me then. How does this actually change from what they were doing before, Tom?
Previously, Meta had over 40,000 content moderators. Now they are going to have significantly fewer. And like I said, they're going to rely on the community much more to do all of that hard work. But the Intercept, which is a really great publication, actually found some of the training material that is now being disseminated to those content moderators. And just to give you an example of some of the things that are now permissible on Facebook and Instagram, it is now fine, according to Mark Zuckerberg and co, to say, for instance, that immigrants are grubby, filthy pieces of shit. You can call gays freaks. And it's also perfectly fine, and please, this is a trigger warning, it is fine to say, look at that tranny underneath a photo of a 17-year-old girl. All bets are off now in terms of civic conversation, which is really ironic considering that is what Mark Zuckerberg is claiming. He wants to bring back civic content. But in the same breath, he also means that as political content. I'm not entirely sure why he's calling it civic content, because it's certainly not going to be civil.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add on to this. I mean, hopefully it's not as dark as what Tom is pertaining, because I will be running out of Facebook if that really happens. But essentially, Tom said a really good thing, which is previously there are training materials. You are told what could be right or wrong, and it's a third party set of people. And, regardless of their own beliefs, they would follow this training material. Whereas now it's really up to the community to decide if something is good or bad. Is it factual? Is it not? Which is basically influenced by a lot of things. It's influenced by your own belief system. It's influenced if you are getting paid as well by other, agencies and so on. So it's really going to be an interesting turn of events, as you can see. I mean, for businesses, for sure, what does this mean to us? This basically means that I could be, promoting, putting a lot of money behind an ad that would be shown in a platform that could have things that are not aligned to the values of my company. So that also in turn affects my brand, because again, that no one is it's all up to the community to now decide what is true or not.
Yes, so this could have some pretty devastating effects on brands and also just sort of people. I guess we'll see the true nature of some of Meta's users that come out that may have been sort of not hidden, but hidden before. So are we doing anything about it? Are you aware of any companies that have made announcements about sort of Meta's changes and all this stuff that Zuckerberg's announced? And do you think there's any particular reason why it's all come to light now? I'm going to go with Tom.
So I can't speak particularly to your first point. I feel like everybody is kind of doing this. And that ties to the second point, which I can speak to, which is we have a new administration coming in America now. So to give a little bit of context, as I said, Meta previously had 40,000 content moderators. They spent $280 million setting up an oversight board where they were going to be like a Supreme Court who would adjudicate on the tougher moderation decisions. And Zuckerberg personally previously donated nearly $420 million to election infrastructure projects that allowed people to vote safely during COVID. And for all of that, he has received no like political appreciation. So in America, especially, both the Democrats and the Republicans rally on Facebook for essentially undermining democracy. Now, the validity of those arguments are somewhat varied. The Republicans feel like there's anti-right-wing bias, which is just proven again and again to not be true. And the Democrats look at Facebook for how horrendous it is for mental health and perpetuating all of the lies that the right-wings do publish on their platforms. So essentially, for all of the work that Facebook and Meta have put into trying to moderate their platforms, they have received nothing and just spent money. And now an administration is coming in run by a man who is personally vindictive and has previously threatened to actually imprison Zuckerberg for the work that Meta has done in moderating their platforms under the ridiculous banner of free speech. So I can kind of understand why he would just go, oh, F it, I don't need this aggro anymore. There is no point. There is no benefit to me moderating my platforms because I'm not getting anywhere politically from doing it. And my users seem to stay regardless. I think also he's probably looking at what has happened over at X, who got rid of all of their content moderators essentially. And it doesn't seem to have like significantly harmed the brand. Well, it has harmed the brand, but like, they are still managing to function. And Elon Musk has essentially bought an election through the use of X. So there's there's no downside to him doing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can I just jump in? I mean, you can see with the stats, there's a definitely decrease in users of X and ad spent on X. So there will be repercussions for sure on Facebook and other social media tools that will be changing the restrictions as an effect of the Trump administration. I want to put this as well in a broader perspective. There are a lot of articles coming out that it's not only Facebook who are revisiting their content regulations. And basically, everyone that has, quote unquote, a woke policy, protecting immigrants, gender identity, and those type of sorts, are essentially revisiting that. There are companies that are, as we speak, already taking out their DEI infrastructure. They're already taking out things that they have put in place during the Me Too movement, during the Black Lives Matter. They're not taking that out because as a result of the Trump administration. And, a good example of this is like the impending ban of Twitter. It really depends on the regulations of the country that you work in and how it affects how you work on that country. So I think they just want to make sure that they are in good light with the new administration. I don't think that this will last forever because hopefully, Trump doesn't last forever. But here we go. This is the new day that we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a really key point. It probably won't last forever. Zuckerberg has proven time and time again that he will zig and zag to wherever the sort of political breeze is going. So he's like ruthlessly focused on ensuring that whatever decision he makes is the best thing to ensure that Facebook continues to make money. So there's probably that sort of business element to it as well. Debbie, I was really interested when you said that there might be or there will be reductions across social media spend. We definitely saw that in X because it was just so toxic. But I also think it was a lot easier to drop X because in terms of return on investment, I never really felt like Twitter at the time bought in that much value. But Facebook, or like Meta's ad platform, is massive. I think it's possibly the second biggest ad platform going. So do you really think that brands are going to start dropping their spend on these platforms?
I think that the brands need to basically weigh in their options right now. I'm gonna make a bold prediction that I do think that there will be a dip. Will that stay long? Maybe not. That's, it's almost as if like they will just make sure that their customers are happy with them right now because they're not throwing their money at X, but at the same time, when everyone has calmed down, they might like put their money back up. But I'm foreseeing this because I also feel that brands need to compensate on something else. I feel like as an effect of this, this regulations, this change in regulations, there might be a need for brands to invest in other security tools that are out there. In order to make sure that whatever ads they're putting out does not get seen, does not get seen on a page that supports terrorism, for instance. Like that amount of money needs to be compensated somewhere else.
Yeah, honestly, every day I move more and more towards, I actually fully support Australia banning social media from the 16-year-olds because it's just crazy. So again, what does this really mean for the advertisers and brand safety? Like, are we going to see ads next to sort of ads for deodorant next to hate speech, or is this something we don't need to worry about?
I think that's what it would potentially mean is that you don't know anymore, or you're not, the level of confidence that you have on the platform that your ads will be shown to your right audience will not be 100% anymore. I think that's potentially what's going to happen.
So we need to wrap this up soon, but I'm so invested in this conversation, and it's going to be one of those things that I listen back to after we've recorded this podcast because it's just so much information. But Tom, what about Meta's brand? Has this had any real meaningful impact on them? Are they moving towards becoming more like X, or do you think this won't really impact them that much?
Well, this is the thing. How good was Meta's brand to start with? I don't think anybody looked at Meta as like the bastion of good brand. They have essentially from the start been embroiled in scandals. Like Cambridge Analytica did untold damage to their brand, even if it didn't really affect their business. And having Zuckerberg repeatedly hauled up in front of Congress just so that they can shout at him for social media clips that they then post on his social media platforms. Like Facebook has been dragged through the ringer, and this rebrand to Meta didn't really do anything to rehabilitate the brand. So I don't think they were starting from a particularly high point, and those who are upset by these changes probably weren't in love with Facebook and their policies and their sort of like mendacious behavior before. So it's kind of hard to gauge how problematic this has been from a brand perspective. I think what has probably annoyed people more is like, I feel like what we're seeing is a rejection of like this billionaire ring kissing to Trump. I think Zuckerberg's brand has probably been damaged more than Facebook's brand, in the same way that Jeff Bezos and Sundar Pichai, like all of the sort of tech CEOs who are now playing the political game of cozying up to Trump, donating to his inauguration fund, all of that sort of stuff. I feel their personal brands are probably more affected than the company brands at the minute.
And if I may add to that, I feel like the way that we view this billion-dollar big brands that are essentially out of our reach is that brand perception for them can be categorized in different ways. It's the brand perception of their users, the brand perception of their partners, but also the brand perception of litigations like government officials. And I think in a way, and I must say, this is true for big brands. The reality is, and the truth is, the brand perception of governments is much more important than the brand perception of their users, because they would not be able to run things. They would not be able to run in the city, hire, operate if they're always like, put regulations against them if they are kicked out of the country and so on. So right now, what they're doing is actually good in terms of reputation for the new US administration. Whether they lose users or not, they don't really, I don't think they would care too much about that, because as you can see, there were also a lot of people that voted for Trump. So a lot of people do agree to this sentiment of free speech in every way and form. So in a way, they might be losing supports, but they might also be gaining support in other parts.
Such a good point. And especially with this sort of impending ban of TikTok, Meta has to stay on the right side of the government and stay in their favour. So this might seem a bit of a jump from our last question, but I'm very conscious of how much time we have left. Very quickly, do marketers need to have exit strategies? And if so, where could they even go? We'll start with Debbie and then we'll go to Tom.
No, it's the same as if anyone can go back to the podcast episode of everyone jumping into threads, I say hold tight, because with these social media channels, you don't really know what happens. It might be true for now, they might change their policy later on, and so on and so forth. However, exit strategy is not what they need to think about right now. What they need to think about is, one, not relying too much on Facebook for promotions. So trying to think about which areas should they do. If they want to go outside of the US, want to try other regions, offline marketing, advocates, influencers, experts, try to diversify where you're putting your ad spend and your promotion money. Number two is, as I mentioned before, which is really looking at, do you need to really invest in a tool that basically, acts as your gatekeeper to make sure that at least your brand will be protected in these platforms.
Amazing. And Tom, have you got anything to add to that?
Sort of contradicting Debbie, I don't think it's ever a bad idea to have an exit strategy. It's never sensible to have all of your eggs in one basket. And as we've said, Meta is such a massive player in the advertising space. Like, the only company that's bigger than them is Google or Alphabet. And that's a problem for the ad market. So, I mean, like, maybe this will open up new avenues, but at the minute, there's nothing really out there. And unfortunately, the biggest social media networks are Facebook and Instagram. You've also got TikTok, but in America, that's potentially going to be banned. I mean, news literally today, as we're recording this, suggests that possibly TikTok are going to just ban American users themselves rather than like sell themselves up or let Congress decide how people can access it. It's a really wild time at the minute, and potentially a good time to start experimenting with other channels as well. Like, so don't go full-throated into something else, but have a little look.
Great. So hold tight, but have a backup plan in place, essentially, just in case. Amazing. Thanks so much for both of you for joining me on this podcast. It's honestly been so interesting, and I've really enjoyed hosting this section. Back to Hayden in the studio, I guess.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. We love making this content. If you enjoyed the topics that we spoke about today, please do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Follow us on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts, and we will see you in the next one. I've been Hayden, and these guys are the marketers of the universe.
Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. God, that was awful. Cut that.